Well, welcome. So thank you, Bronwyn, for your introduction. And it's really lovely to be here with the Association of Engaged Buddhists, who are dear old friends of mine. And I really appreciate the work your organization does to bring Dharma to this community, and also the work that you do to help the community through your various activities, such as doing your food fairs to raise money for refugees. And I saw recently through some emails that people are collecting food donations and things like that. And it's so wonderful to see people coming together like this to help others. So tonight we're going to be talking about the bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening. This is an important area for us to look at. It's also good news to hear that on this path, there's something that we can grab onto that will take us to awakening, something that we can develop and cultivate that will help us on our spiritual path. So often we hear about the suffering, we hear about the problems, but there's this other side to our spiritual practice, which is so beautiful to ponder, this idea of our potential to achieve full awakening. So this is something that I want to have a chat with you about tonight. And I thought we'd begin by going to refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Do we still do that? Yeah, it's a nice thing to do. We recite the Namo Tassa, the homage to the Buddha, and we recite the 3 refuges, going to refuge to the triple gem, the Buddha, our teacher, the Dhamma, his teaching, and to the Sangha of enlightened beings who realized the Buddha's teachings for themselves. And then we'll recite the recollections of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, the anusatis of the triple gem, which are a good way to help us inspire our minds, to uplift our hearts, and to put us back in touch with our spiritual practice. Sometimes when we do these small rituals, it's very useful for us. We get in the zone. We feel like, yes, this is my spiritual activity time. And so just hearing these words sometimes can trigger something within us, whether subliminally or consciously, that helps connect us to our spiritual practice. And it's also very meritorious to do this. It's good for us to recite the Dhamma. It's good for us to pay respect to the Buddha. And these are positive things that we can do as part of our spiritual practice. So we're going to take a few moments to do that. And so I'm just going to move so that I'm in front of Buddha on the floor. And everyone else, you can join in online. You can join in this room as we do this beautiful part of the Theravada spiritual tradition. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. sangham saranam gacchami. Tatayampi buddham saranam gacchami. Tatayampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatayampi sangham saranam gacchami. Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho. Ija charana sampano sugato lokavidu. Anuttaro Bodhisattva Sarati Sattva Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagavati Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandipito Akāliko Ehipassiko Opanaiko Bhajatam Veditapo Vinyu Iti Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ujjupatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Nyayapatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samicipatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yudhani Atta Purisa Buddhala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Ahuneyo Tatineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutaram Punyaketam Lokasati. Okay, very good. So it's nice to recite the Nussitis. And now we have some time to do some meditation, which is wonderful. So long sometimes in between our meditations, right? It's so difficult for us to take the time out of our lives to spend a few moments with our mind. Today I'm going to be talking about the bojjhangas, which fits into the right effort part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right effort belongs to the meditation division of that Noble Eightfold Path, which also includes right mindfulness and right samādhi. So right effort, right mindfulness, right samādhi, these are important parts of our meditation. These are the way we understand our practice and the way we start to gain mastery over our mind. So tonight we're going to be doing a mindfulness practice. We'll begin by becoming aware of the place that we're in, aware of our body, the posture of our body, aware of our thoughts. We'll then move on to awareness of our breathing. And so we'll very gently and very slowly develop our practice tonight. And afterwards we'll review it. We'll start to understand what goes on in our practice more and more. So this is what I want to share with you tonight. So I invite you all to take comfortable posture, something that works for you, where you can feel relaxed and comfortable, but yet maintain some level of awareness. And so now you can close your eyes and we begin by letting go. So important to do at the beginning of our practice, whatever has been going on for you today, all of your activities, all of your worries and stresses, all of your problems, even all of your pleasures and delights. For the time being, for the next 30 minutes, just let them go, let them be. Allow them to be in the past. And so we make a intention, a decision that for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be here, now. And so we let go of the past. We let it be. We'll also let go of the future, all that worrying, thinking about what's to come. It's so uncertain, our future. We allow ourselves to have some freedom from that uncertainty, freedom from the future, by letting go of worrying, planning, thinking about what's to come. And so in this way, by letting go of the past, letting go of the future, we can be here. We can be now, present, aware. And so now we start to develop some mindfulness about what's going on right here, right now. So tune in to the place you are in. Become aware of what's going on around you. Could be the sound of a ticking clock, traffic, the hum of a fan, the temperature of the room that you're in, the light coming through your eyelids. And become aware of your body seated here, now, in this place. How does your body feel? Get a general shape of this body. See the posture your body is in. We want to be relaxed and comfortable for our meditation. So as you tune into this body, see if you can't help the body feel more comfortable, more relaxed. When the body is comfortable, relaxed, it's easy to be here and now. It's easy to meditate. So spend a few moments relaxing the body, letting go of tightness, letting go of tension, releasing and relaxing. Allow the body to feel good. And as the body relaxes, you see the mind already becoming more calm, more peaceful. Sure, thoughts and distractions come and go. But we relax our mind just like we relax the body by letting go, not holding on, not getting involved. We notice the peace and calm. We pay attention to that. When we're relaxed and comfortable, when we're calm and peaceful, it's so easy to watch the breath. Suddenly it's there, and we're mindful. I'm breathing in. We're mindful of breathing out. We're breathing in mindfully, breathing out mindfully. We're aware of each breath coming in, aware of each breath going out. With a calm, quiet mind, we watch this breath. This breath helps us be here and now. Helps deepen our mindfulness. Helps deepen our peace and tranquility. And when thoughts or distractions come, it's okay. We don't get involved, we don't hold on. we let go and gently return to the breath, being mindful. And so keep practicing like this, aware of your breathing for the next 20 minutes. And so now as we come towards the end of our practice, still with your eyes closed, let's take a few moments to review, to investigate what happened over the course of our meditation. So you can ask yourself, how are you feeling now? Is it different from when you began? Why? Were you able to watch the breath? And how was that? Were there moments where the mind was calm and peaceful? Were there moments when the mind was restless or agitated, tired or distracted? And what did you do or think that allowed the mind to become more calm and more peaceful? And what did you do or think that made the mind more restless, agitated, tired, distracted? So by reflecting in this way, we start to understand the process of our meditation and our role as meditators. We start to see the relationship between cause and effect. We start to see what leads towards peace, calmness, stillness, and what things lead away. So hopefully you're feeling good. Why don't we relax our awareness now? Coming back to the room. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Yeah, we can probably turn it off now. So that's some meditation. How are you feeling after doing some meditation? Yeah, you feel good? Better? Yeah. Right. What about you people over there online? You feel good? Are there any complaints or criticisms? No. So when we practice meditation, very quickly we see the benefits, we see the results. And if we really want to make a lot of progress in our meditation practice. We have to develop some awareness and insight into what actually goes on in our mind and understand that we are active participants in our experience. So one of the questions I like to ask from time to time is there only one true method of meditation? What do people think online? A shake of the head or a nod? There's only one true method. No? What do you think? No? No?
In the sense that it's all leading to the one thing, enlightenment. There's one thing, awareness or insight that would get you there.
Okay, so in the sense that it's leading to enlightenment, it's kind of good, right? And so people online are saying no. And so there's not one way of practicing meditation. Is that what you're saying? There's not one right way of practicing meditation.
So there might be one right.
But is there wrong ways to practice meditation? If you say there's no there's no one right way, are there wrong ways of practicing meditation? Yeah, so there's plenty of wrong ways to practice meditation. So that's a bit difficult to understand, isn't it? If there's no right way, then we might just be practicing happily. But what if we're practicing the wrong way? How would you feel about that? How do you know? So we all have these inherent biases actually about what is right and wrong when it comes to meditation practice. Most of the time, the right way is the way that we practice, and the wrong way is the way everyone else practices, right? Or the right way is the method that we learned and our teacher taught us. We like that. Whereas the wrong way is these other teachers and other traditions and things like that. And I talk about this because I want people to start thinking about how we actually meditate and what meditation is for and the role of meditation in the spiritual path. I think it's a mistake sometimes to think that there's only one right meditation method, and there are some schools and some techniques who insist upon this and who have copyrighted their method and insist that you practice this method and this alone, which I think is a very dangerous approach. Because meditation is a very dynamic process. It's a dynamic practice. And the Buddha himself, he didn't teach one method of meditation. He taught, firstly, he taught students. And this is important to remember. The Buddha taught people what they needed to know at that particular time. And he would teach different things at different times. Sometimes he would teach people very simply. Sometimes he would teach people with a lot of depth, and it was appropriate to what they understood already and what they needed to know to progress further. And so if we're just going to rely upon one method, then we're perhaps missing out on a very dynamic part of the spiritual path. We can become quite boring also in our meditation practice. Sometimes we'll reach a plateau where we just feel like we're not progressing, we're not developing. And one of the most problematic things that I've struggled with as a meditator is listening to instructions that seem to suggest you should only do one thing in your meditation, that you should just do nothing. And so this is how a lot of us have been taught, I think. We've been told, don't do anything. Just sit there, observe, do nothing. And this will have a certain effect on our mind. This will have this will help us gain some tranquility. And as we progress in our meditation, you know, the things that bother us, like the hindrances or defilements, they might fade away. But it can take a lot of time, this doing nothing. And sometimes, if we've only got like 15 minutes a day or a week, I'm not judging, if we don't do anything in that time, we might end up just sitting thinking the whole time about chocolate cake or Netflix, daydreaming or falling asleep. And because we've been told don't do anything, we'll just watch these thoughts come and go. And if we're not careful, we can actually spend our entire time in meditation thinking. And we've sometimes been encouraged just to watch and to note and to not interfere. Don't try to get rid of your thoughts. Don't try to get rid of your cravings. Just notice them. And sure, this might work in the long term. But the fact is, we're rather slow learners. And so actually, by just observing what's going on, but never reflecting upon it or never learning about it, we can actually end up spending our entire meditation experience in the grip of a hindrance or in the grip of a defilement, or just rather numb and bored. And when I look at the early Buddhist texts, the suttas, I see that this doing nothing isn't how the Buddha taught meditation. And this confused me for a little while, because even when I hear great meditation teachers who I respect, they won't allow the meditator to be active and involved in their meditation. And then I realized that perhaps they're teaching a certain point of meditation, a certain aspect of meditation, part of that process. Sure, there's sometimes in our meditation practice where we should do nothing, where it's not beneficial for us to do anything, where we need to just chill out and step back, get out of the way. But that's at a certain point of our practice. Before we get to that point, however, we may need to use some effort, some skill. And this is what we call samādhi, right effort. And this is part of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the sixth part of the Noble Eightfold Path, the sixth factor. Have you heard about right effort before? Yes. Yeah, most of us here have, probably most of you online have. So this is a really important part of our meditation practice, this developing of right effort. And so when we hear these words, right effort, and we know that they're part of the meditation division of right effort, right mindfulness, right samādhi, when we hear this word effort, it should start to make us think about what's required here as part of our meditation practice. We can't just do nothing. We can't just sit back and hope to get enlightened. We can't just hope that by sitting there for 15 minutes, our mind is somehow magically going to be transformed. No, there's an effort that is required. So to give you a simile of how the Buddha taught, the Buddha gives a beautiful analogy of a goldsmith. And the goldsmith, of course, their job is to take the raw gold, process it, and turn it into purified gold, right? Which is obviously, gold is always in the sutras a metaphor for the mind. And so the goldsmith takes, the conglomerate and needs to purify the stones and dirt and other things away. So it's a process the goldsmith is engaged in, a process. And so Buddha says that goldsmith, when they're standing there working, from time to time, they're going to have to heat the bellows up. They're going to have to put more oxygen into the fire so that it gets hotter and hotter so that the gold will melt. At other times, they need to sprinkle it with water to cool the gold down. And sometimes they just have to stand back and do nothing. If they were only to do nothing, the gold could not be purified. If they were to only heat up the bellows, then the gold would burn. If they were to only sprinkle that water, then the gold will become too brittle and cool to work. So this is a way that we can understand that meditation, working with our mind, is a dynamic practice. The things that we do at the beginning, actually the things we do before we sit down, and then when we sit down, this is part of our meditation. Obviously, we're going to need to do different things at the beginning and the middle and the end. It makes sense, right? Think about other things in your life. If you were to only do things one way, you wouldn't get very far. Take driving a car. You need to turn left. You need to slow down. You need to speed up. You need to stop. You couldn't just do one thing. And it's the same with every other part of our life. And so that's why when we're talking about meditation, it's important to remember that it's a dynamic practice and that certain things are required at certain times. We don't just do one thing. For example, if you only have one approach to your meditation or only one technique, it's kind of a little bit like that phrase, when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's a very crude way to be a craftsperson. You obviously need some different skills. You need some different tools at your disposal. And so as we progress in the meditation path, we should get better at our craft. Many people, and I've spoken to so many meditators who have been practicing for so many years and who have never improved in their practice. They do the same thing over and over again, but they never develop. Or if they develop, it's very slow. And they often come to me saying, I feel like my meditation practice is completely flatlined, I'm bored with it, I never seem to make any progress. And so if that's you, then it's good to know that there's different ways of practicing and that you could probably try something that might make a big difference. And so this is part of our practice of right effort. So right effort, samādhi, is divided into 4 different groupings. 2 of them are like negative, things that we want to get rid of that are unskillful or unbeneficial or unwholesome. And the others are wholesome, beneficial, good, useful. And so the first of our right efforts is to prevent unarisen, unwholesome states from appearing in our mind. Unarisen, unwholesome states, things that aren't already there, we want to prevent them from coming in. The second is to abandon the already arisen, unwholesome states in our mind. So the ones that are there, we want to let them go, say bye-bye. So this is right effort, yeah? To prevent, there's an effort to prevent, and then there's an effort to abandon. And then on the other side, we have the effort to cultivate unarisen, wholesome states in our mind. Unarisen, wholesome states. Good states that aren't already there, we want them in our mind. We have to cultivate them. And the last of the right efforts is to maintain those arisen, wholesome states in our mind. There's an effort to cultivate. There's an effort to maintain. So what are these unwholesome states? What are these wholesome states? What are these unskillful things? What are the skillful things? What are the bad and the good? So when the Buddha talked about right effort, the simplest way he talked about it, and the way that we can understand it, is that the things that are unwholesome, unskillful, unbeneficial, bad, these are called the 5 hindrances, which many of you know, right? 5 hindrances. These are the things that make your meditation not good. Things like sense desire, craving for stuff, always wanting something else, anything else, but to be there meditating. That's the desire for chocolate cake, for cups of tea, for just watching a little bit of Netflix instead. This is sense desire, and we experience it in our daily life. We also predictably experience it in our meditation practice. When we experience it in our meditation practice, our mind is agitated by sense desire. Oh, thinking about, not just any chocolate cake, but the perfect chocolate cake. And our mind starts to imagine the perfect chocolate cake, just describes it in wonderful detail, how it would have that particular icing, those little sprinkles. We see it, right? This is how sense desire disturbs and agitates our meditation. So that's the first of the hindrances. The second is ill will. Ill will bubbles and boils our poor little mind, fills us with resentment and anger and hate. And this takes us away from peace and kindness, which we need in our practice. The third hindrance is dullness and drowsiness, or sloth and torpor, that feeling of sinking, the mind becoming cramped and small, of falling asleep. And of course, when we've got that hindrance present in our mind, our meditation is useless. It's very close to delusion and sleep. We're not bright and alert. So our mind is not really workable for meditation. The fourth hindrance is restlessness, remorse. It's that flurry of mental activity that pushes us to the future, wanting something, anything, anything to take us away from our meditation. You've got a bit of restlessness when you think to yourself, I really need to vacuum the house. And you get up mid-meditation for a sudden cleaning frenzy. Or you just, this kind of feeling of being pushed, wanting to be doing something, anything else. The mind, when it's got restlessness present, is not still, is not peaceful, which we need for meditation. So our mind is distracted and dispersed. And the last hindrance is the hindrance of doubt, uncertainty about how to practice, what's right and wrong, what leads to good results, what technique is good or bad. And this doubt is a crippling thing to have in your mind. It completely disturbs the peace of your meditation. You have no sense that I'm doing the correct thing. You have no confidence in your practice, and it will just end your meditation. So these are the things that we want to prevent from coming into our mind and abandon if they're already present. So that's that part of right effort. I don't want to talk too much about how we do that, because what I really want to talk about tonight is that other aspect, those good things, the things that we need to cultivate and maintain. And these are described in their most basic form as the bojjhangas, the 7 awakening factors. So these are the things that we need to develop in our meditation practice if we want to make progress. Yes, it's very important to focus on abandoning and preventing those hindrances. This will be the bulk of our practice in meditation, especially at the beginning. But the way we do that is we actively start employing the 7 factors of awakening. We actively cultivate these. So what are they? Do we know? Do you all know? Have you heard of these before? Yeah, it's not so often talked about, actually, which is a shame, because if we talked about it more, we'd have more, I guess, more ownership over our meditation practice. So the first, always the first, is mindfulness. Mindfulness of what's going on here and now, mindfulness of what we turn our attention to. So this is the very first bojjhanga, the first factor of awakening. The second is investigation of phenomena. So when we're meditating, mindfulness is really useful, right? It tells us what's going on, but it's just raw data. It's just information. We need another level of discernment, of wisdom, to help us interpret that information and understand, is what's going on now a hindrance? Is it useful? Is it going to help me in my practice? Is it leading to unwholesome results for me? Or is what was going on now good? Is this right? Is this helping? Am I making progress in my meditation? So this is how investigation helps us. So tonight we did some of this, right? We started off developing mindfulness. So we're already practicing one of the bojjhangas, one of the 7 awakening factors, which is great, yeah? We're already cultivating this really wholesome thing that's going to help us in our practice. And at the end, I asked you to review and to investigate what was going on. I asked you to look and see how you're feeling now as opposed to how you were feeling when you first sat down. I wanted you to be able to see the difference between not doing any meditation, the kind of mind you have, and then doing some meditation and seeing the result of your practice. And I asked what things led to more peace and more calm in your mind. What things led away from peace and calm in your mind. Understanding these things, seeing the connection between your thinking mind and the results, this is what will transform our meditation practice. This will help us go from like being amateur level meditators to professionals, because we're getting into how this actually works, how this process functions, how our mind can go either way. And if we're smart, if we have some wisdom, we want to prevent and abandon unarisen or arisen unwholesome states in our mind. We don't just want to sit there with them for the entire half an hour, just being in the grip of anger or sense desire or restlessness. We don't want to just sit with that. We need to make an effort to let it go, to abandon it. Why? Because it doesn't lead to good results. Why? The Buddha said this is a hindrance. And if we can see that by letting it go, we can have freedom from that hindrance, then this is how we practice right effort, by preventing and abandoning. And then there's good things like mindfulness, right? You get to a certain stage of your mindfulness practice where you're like really in the zone and you think, how did I get here? What did I do to get in the zone? Well, I watched the breath and I kept watching the breath. And that's why I'm here really now, really sharp and focused. That's why so much energy has come into my mind, because it's not preoccupied with hindrance of sloth and torpor or anger dispersing your energy or restlessness. It's free from those hindrances, and there's a beautiful, open, expansive energy that's in my mind now. So when we see this, we're like, oh, how did I get there? Oh, it's because I did this and this and this, or I let go of that and that and that. So we start to piece together what actually is occurring in our mind. So this is why that investigation is very important for us to understand. So many people are like these passive, inert, uninterested watchers of their mind. They sit there and they kind of like see what's going on, but they never become reflective. They never inquire. And so they don't make progress in their meditation. So this is the second factor of the second bojjhangas, investigation of phenomena, understanding what's going on. This is a little bit of wisdom that we need. The third is energy, virya, energy that comes up into the mind. So there's a couple of different ways we can understand this. Part of that energy has to do with determination, with making effort. Part of it happens when the hindrances are becoming lessened and the mind is becoming more focused, becomes more powerful. And you probably felt this in your practice. The mind can become incredibly energized, actually. And is when you've got that energy in the mind, you just feel like, yes, it's like, you know, when you see a sailboat just like sailing along, it's got the gust of wind behind it, and it's just so smooth and so easy. You know, this is that kind of energy that comes to the mind. The mind can become very, very, very powerful. A lot of you have probably experienced this on your retreats. The mind becomes powerful, and unfortunately, we end up dispersing that power by using that powerful mind we've developed to just do a little bit of thinking. Usually, we'll start solving problems. We'll think about work issues, and then that energy that the mind was developing is destroyed because we didn't understand the link between how that energy appeared in our mind and how it should be sustained. If we understood that, then we wouldn't get distracted. We wouldn't allow our mind to indulge in thinking and solving boring problems. Because if we do that, we're cutting out the cause for future energy to grow in our mind. But when there's energy present, the mind is really becoming more unified, more um, more powerful, and it's so easy to work in meditation when the mind is like this. The next factor of awakening is piti, rapture, that thrill of positive feelings in the mind and body that come up in your practice. And it comes up because you've gone through a process You've decided to sit down and meditate. You've developed some mindfulness. You see what's going on in your mind. You feel the energy start to come up in the mind, and then you get this wave of beautiful feelings, sensations in the body and the mind. And this is such an important part of the practice. It's called the glue that sticks the mind into meditation, on the meditation subject. You've got that energy bubbling up, which is great. You've got the momentum. And if you're not careful, that energy could go this way or that way. But the piti is what glues the mind onto the meditation subject, and it's backed by that energy. And piti itself is quite a lot of energy in the mind, in the body. You feel it, the thrill of tingles and goosebumps, or the shudders and blissgasms, I call them. And this makes the mind very happy and want to be there. But it relies upon this energy being released. So the commentator Buddhaghosa, he described the link between sukha, bliss, and rapture. So when we see this word in the list of bojjhangas, piti, we should also understand that there is both piti and sukha, bliss. So piti and the sukha, they arise together, but the sukha is more refined and will remain a long time, whereas the piti is often momentary or doesn't last as long, but it is much more coarse and a little bit agitating. So the commentator Buddhaghosa described it as someone who is walking through the desert and they're a bit hot and sweaty, and they see someone coming towards them who's just had a nice bath, and they think, well, where have you just come from? And they're like, oh, there's an oasis over there. And so it's like, oh, this thrill of, oh my goodness, there's an oasis. It's this enthusiasm, this excitement that comes from walking towards the oasis. This is the piti. And of course, you're happy, right? I'm going to have a bath. And then you get in that cool water, and this is very much the piti and the sukha mixed. And then afterwards, you get out, you're nice and cool, and you lie down in the shade. And this is the sukha. It's so much more refined. The excitement, the thrill has faded, but there's still that blissful sukha that is much more stable and much more steady. And so, although it's not mentioned in this list of the bojjhangas, it should be inferred that sukha is an important part. And so these words, piti sukha, rapture and bliss, these always go together. But remember that piti can be quite coarse. It is almost sometimes overwhelmingly agitating for the mind to have this thrill of positive experience. But the bliss is much more stable, much more steady. And so that is a refinement that comes as the process of meditation continues. So after the piti in this list, we have tranquility, passaddhi, tranquility. There's tranquility of the body and tranquility of the mind. Tranquility of the body is that feeling of like, oh gosh, it just feels so good and relaxing in this body. There's no pain, there's no restlessness in the body. You just feel really nice. And the reason that we start to experience this is because the sense faculties, the sensory experience of having a body is starting to fade. We're less interested in the body, in the sensory world. It doesn't matter to us as much. We're having a good time on the inside. We're enjoying our meditation. Feels nice. We want to be with the mind, right? And so this is why the sensory experience starts to become less interesting for us. Our sense faculties start to shut down a little bit, to recede. And this allows for the body to become more tranquil. And the same with our mind. We're not being buffeted by sensory information in the world, And the mind being immersed in the meditation has started to become more and more subtle, refined, less agitated, more tranquil. And so this is the process that leads us to the next factor, which is samādhi, stillness, deep meditation. And so properly, this bojjhanga should be understood to be the 4 jhanas, very deep stages of meditation. However, we can experience this also in our own practice, even if we don't get these deep stages, that the mind is drawn in to this stillness, this very deep meditation, through that sequence that I've already described to you. You need to have mindfulness at the beginning, right? You need to understand what's going on, what leads to more mindfulness, what leads away from mindfulness, what leads to the energy starting to appear in the mind, which produces the rapture, which produces that tranquility, that bliss, which draws the mind deeper and deeper into that stillness. So that's how we get to that stage of these bojjhangas, of deep, powerful stillness in the mind. And after we arise from this deep meditation, that's where we have this upekkha, the last of the bojjhangas. Upekkha is this perfect equanimity of the mind, which is neither wanting to lean towards pleasure or towards pain. It's very neutral but incredibly deep, peaceful feeling. And this, again, properly at the level that we're talking about, should be understood to be much deeper than just kind of like, oh yeah, I had equanimity, my mind was just neutral. Often this description of equanimity is just like you're not paying enough attention to what's going on, right? The kind of equanimity we're talking about here is very deep, very powerful equanimity, which is the kind of looking on that you can have when the mind is being properly prepared through deep meditation. We're talking about insights at the enlightenment stage into very profound things, like seeing the suffering in the world, the cause of suffering, understanding things like impermanence or seeing not self. That's when you need to have equanimity, to be okay to sit with these incredibly profound insights. And so this equanimity is probably much deeper than a lot of people mean when they talk about it in their meditation practice. So these are the 7 factors of enlightenment. Should we go through them again? Yes? Mindfulness, right? Very important. Next, investigation, and then energy, and then rapture, and then tranquility, and then samādhi, stillness, and then upekkha. So these are the things that we need to cultivate as part of our meditation practice. And then the things that we need to maintain. The maintaining is really important because when all of these things appear sequentially, they depend upon each other sequentially to build. But when they're sufficiently powerful and present and unified and working together, this is what brings about that moment of enlightenment. And so these can be very subtle and very weak as part of our meditation practice, perhaps, or momentary, or a bit scattered, or a bit singular. But when they work together, then this is the maintenance. That's how we maintain. When they're maintained, then this is what will bring about enlightenment. So that's why they're called the bojjhangas, by the way. It's one of my favorite suttas where a monk comes up. You can find this in the Bojjhanga Samyutta, in the Samyutta Nikaya, where I think it's number 46, chapter number 46. The monk comes up to the Buddha and says, so why are they called the factors of awakening? It's like, they're called the factors of awakening because they lead to awakening, right? So it's like, Buddha had a bit of a dry sense of humor, I think, at times. Like, why are they bojjhangas? Boj means, it comes from the root that we also recognize from things like the Buddha or from Bodhi. So it means to awaken. And anga means like a factor or an appendage or part of something. And so these are things that lead to awakening. The image that the Buddha used to give us a simile, maybe for that particular monk, it was like, why are they called awakening? Well, because they lead to awakening. Image the Buddha uses the pinnacle of a roof like this, and the roof slopes down, right, towards the image is that these will slope towards awakening. These things will lead to awakening, which is why it's so important for us to begin to develop them in our practice. The bojjhangas only appear after a Buddha has come into this world system, this world cycle. And that's something that is really profound to think about, actually. That these teachings, this development of the mind, is only possible once it's already been revealed by an enlightened being. And so this is why the Buddha said that spiritual friendship is the forerunner of developing the awakening factors. Spiritual friendship is the forerunner. Just as the dawn is the forerunner of the sun, in the same way, good friendship, noble friendship, is what allows for these enlightenment factors to be developed. And it's because they need to be taught and shared so that when they've been heard, they can be understood and practiced. And something else that the Buddha frequently discusses in terms of the bojjhangas and in terms of right effort is the importance of yoniso manasikara, wise attention. We need wise attention to understand. It's similar to this aspect of investigating. We need to understand what's going to lead to good results, what's going to lead to harmful results, what are the things that when we inquire into them, show us deep down, this is what's going to lead to this result, this is what's going to lead to that result, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. This is yoniso manasikara, wise attention. And so again, the Buddha says that wise attention is the forerunner of developing these. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? It's unwise attention that leaves us in the grip of those hindrances we talked about before. Unwise attention, ayoniso manasikara, unwise attention when a hindrance comes into our mind, chocolate cake. When chocolate cake comes into our mind, if we were wise, we would recognize, this is a hindrance. This obscures wisdom, leads to vexation, does not lead to enlightenment. But no, we're unwise. We think of this chocolate cake, we think about the flavor, we think about the shape, the icing, the decoration, we think about how maybe two pieces would be better than one. And so we don't pay attention correctly in our meditation. We unwisely allow for this hindrance to take over the mind, our unwise attention actually feeds and fuels that hindrance. By returning over and over again, unwisely, to the features that interest us, excite us, this is how that hindrance grows in your mind and how you find yourself completely overwhelmed by it. In the same way, we can fuel and feed the awakening factors. So this is good to know, right? In the same way, when we experience a hindrance, when we pay it attention, we give it fuel, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? With the awakening factors, it's the same thing. If we see, there is mindfulness in my mind, paying attention to that, understanding that, fuels that mindfulness and keeps it growing. If we understand, there's some energy in my mind, paying attention to that, seeing that makes it more energetic, grows it. This helps us lead to the next level of the bojjhangas. So in this way, we start to learn what are the things that if we pay attention to and notice and develop, will increase those awakening factors within us. And so this is important to understand, that we actually have a role to play here, that when we talk about cultivating these factors, it's actually an effort, it's actually a cultivation. It's not accidental. It's not mysterious and magical, although it is, but it's not the kind of magic that happens to you randomly. It's kind of magic that you create in your own mind. And so in this way, we can start to understand that process of meditation. For example, the Buddha described those hindrances as being like the channels that are dug at the side of a fast-moving stream. That fast-moving stream, when you start to build side channels, the energy is dissipated, right? The water is weakened, the power is weakened. So if those hindrances are there, then the mind will also be less powerful, will be less weak, it will be more weak. But if we have mindfulness and we see those hindrances, we can abandon them quickly before they take over the mind, then that water is going to remain very powerful and strong. And this is like that current of energy that the bojjhangas have. And so when we think about the way we practice these bojjhangas, we actually use them in our meditation. We can cultivate them individually. We can cultivate them sequentially. An example of the individual is found in the Vatu Sutta, where the Buddha, who is the Buddha and can do whatever he wants, says that he will practice the awakening factors individually at any time of the day. He just chooses an awakening factor to practice. And he says it's like a rich king who has a big wardrobe, many clothes. In the morning, the king goes and chooses this outfit. In the afternoon, he chooses that outfit. And in this way, the Buddha said that he will practice these awakening factors individually. Whether or not we can do that as unenlightened beings. Well, I think there's approaching, even if we can't do it at the level of the Buddha or an Arahant, if we have this understanding that, yes, I can practice mindfulness. I am going to practice mindfulness. Or some meditators, they can say, look, it's really easy to develop rapture. for me, for example, when I'm practicing meditation, I can develop rapture very easily by focusing on one of my favorite practices that I teach quite often, chaganusati, the recollection of generosity. Rapture comes up immediately. And this is why we practice things like the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, Anusati, or Sila Anusati, Chaga Anusati, Deva Anusati. These very quickly produce joy in the mind. That joy very quickly becomes rapture. And this is how the Buddha taught. And he said you have to be skillful. Like when you want to develop rapture, then you can develop it based on any of these meditation subjects. This is what he taught. And so it's like a shortcut. Are we? I thought it was 9:30. Oh, got to finish up. Let me finish up with this last simile, which I think will go back to the beginning of the talk where I spoke about the goldsmith, just to show you how to work in meditation, how the Buddha taught us to work in meditation. And so he poses the image of a fire. So the meditation is like a fire, right? There's sometimes when our mind becomes very sluggish and tired. So this is like when the fire goes out. You want the fire to be roaring and hot and going. And there's other times when the mind is agitated and restless. And at that time, the fire's a bit out of control. You want it to be a little bit more steady. And so the Buddha said, sometimes the mind is like this, sometimes the mind is like that. You can employ the bojjhangas, the awakening factors, to help regulate the mind so that it becomes more workable. So if you've got a fire that's going out, you don't put sand or water onto that fire. No, you add more flammable material, more sticks, cow dung, it says. And this helps for the fire to grow. If the mind is becoming overly restless and busy, then you don't add more fuel, you add some water or you add some sand to calm it down. And so in the same way, Buddha said, we use the enlightenment factors dynamically in our meditation practice. If the mind is sluggish, drowsy, tired, at that time, we need to develop the awakening factors of investigation, energy, rapture. These things bring a lot more enthusiasm and power to the mind. When the mind is becoming too sluggish, too overheated and too hot and too warm and restless, then we need to employ the tranquility, the samādhi, and the equanimity. So these are conscious decisions that a meditator makes. What is the enlightenment factor, awakening factor that is missing? Mindfulness. Why? Mindfulness is always useful. Everywhere, every time. So this is a little talk about the bojjhangas, the awakening factors. And I hope that it will be of benefit to you now or in the future. And we're already over time because I have really poor time management skills. So I'm afraid there won't be time for questions online, but I'll make myself available to the people in the room after that. And it's great to see you all online. It's great to see you here in real life. And I wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you, Bhante.
My pleasure, yes.
But actually, just to let you know, next week, Bhante Tejadamo will be talking on Zoom on the topic of reimagining and restoring the lost feminine and women in Buddhism. Also to mention, Bhante Akāliko is holding an Easter long weekend retreat.
Yeah.
So that's over the Easter long weekend.
And it's going to be a great retreat. It's called A Journey to Enlightenment. and we've got like 3 days to get there.